We are going through a series on the characters of Christmas. We're looking at the different main characters in the story, the Christmas story, and today we're at the shepherds. And so we're going to focus on what the shepherds were like and what they did, and maybe different than what you've heard before, which is okay, because we should be learning, we should be growing in our faith. I've got a little video here today. It is made by a mom and her son, and her young son is sitting in the back of the car, and he's talking about the Christmas play he's going to be in, and he's trying to get his mother to guess what his character is in the Christmas play. And so they're British, so they speak English, but not really. So try to understand it. We'll see if this works.
Guess what I am for the nativity? I'm a classic one.
Classic role, is it? Classic part?
Yeah.
Joseph?
No.
One of the three wise men?
No.
One of the innkeepers?
No.
Button to answer. Call rejected.
But it's a classic part?
Yeah.
Okay. You tell me then, because...
I'm door holder number 3. I'll be holding doors.
Amazing! Holding doors for who?
Probably Joseph and Mary.
Oh my gosh, were you pleased when they said that?
Yeah. And I was like, I'm a door holder. Get in there. Let's go. Yeah.
Whoa.
And maybe because there's no room, I'll probably be just coming in, and then I'll just slam the door in their face.
Is that your star role?
Maybe. I'll probably be dressed up as a door.
Okay, all right. We put on these Christmas plays, and they somewhat resemble the story. I never saw door holder number 3. I wonder what happened number 1 and number 2. I'm not sure there were doors even, so. Looking at what really happened in the Bible, I think is important as we look at the story and see what it means for us today. And sometimes the story gets, covered over with these other stories like, the drummer boy or the innkeeper, and all these things get added to this story. And we were influenced by our own backgrounds. And I thought about this when I went to Nazareth when I was in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land. And our trip went to Nazareth, and there's a church called the Church of the Holy Annunciation, where Mary, heard from this angel that she was to have a baby Jesus. And at this church, they have these paintings in this outside courtyard. I got a picture of it. And they're paintings of Mary and the baby from different cultures, okay? Did you ever think of Jesus that looks like this? No, this is like Japanese, okay, I think. Then this next one, I think that's Greek, maybe closer. The next one, I'm not sure exactly where that is. The next one looks like Native American. The next one's Chinese, I think. Maybe, I'm not sure. Or Asian something. And then this one's Middle Ages English. And what I thought about by looking at all these is how much our backgrounds influence the way we see things. And I guess that's impossible not to be influenced by the surroundings and what you've heard before. But as time goes on, we forget what really happened. I went to see this movie, Napoleon, and I'd been reading a whole lot about Napoleon, think it was going to be a great movie. And then there's this one scene in the movie where basically Napoleon fires cannonballs and takes out the other army because it hits the ice and they all sink. And historically, that never happened. But it makes great movies. Archaeologists have done stuff looking in the in the water, and they never found one iron cannonball. And so it's funny how we add stuff to the story to make it seem better. And so today, and throughout this series, I want to try to answer two questions. The first one is this: what do we think we know about Christmas that we shouldn't know? What do we think we know that really is not really so, not really true? Second, what do we not know that we should know? Because sometimes when you look carefully, you find, well, the real story is better than that story. And so today I want to start with the shepherds. And what were the shepherds like when Jesus was born? You know, what were they like? Because most of us don't know what first century such shepherds were like. It begins in chapter 2, verse 8, the story of the shepherds. It says, there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby Bethlehem, keeping watch over their flocks at night. Now, in countless sermons today, and if you go on YouTube or other places, you can hear countless sermons that talk about how the shepherds were a despised class of people, outcast. They were the worst level that you could think of. They were just really low down, no good people. Everybody teaches this. And the idea is, well, you know, Jesus came to the least to have his message revealed. But if you look at the history, were they really a despised class of people like, I don't know, prostitutes or whatever you might think of as in that culture? Now, the sources that claim that they were like that, I've done some research on this because, you know, I'm a nerd and I do that kind of thing, okay. Claiming that this are really years before and after when the New Testament was written. The main sources that talk about what shepherds were like when people quote this and teach this are, number one, Aristotle. Now, Aristotle said this about shepherds. He said, the laziest kinds of people are shepherds who lead an idle life. They get their sustenance without trouble from tame animals. He says, their flocks wandering from place to place in search of a pasture, they're compelled to follow them around, cultivating a sort of living farm. And so Aristotle didn't think much of shepherds. So a lot of people quote Aristotle. Here's the issue, though. Aristotle lived 300 years before Jesus in Greece. Totally different culture than the people of Israel. The other two resources are the Mishnah. The Mishnah was written over a period of time from, it was actually written from 200 to 250 AD. So that was over 150 years after Jesus' time. And in the Mishnah, there's one verse that talks about lowly shepherds, but that's the only one. And the other, most of these quotes come from the Talmud. Now, the Babylonian Talmud was written in 500 AD. And there are some texts that talk about how shepherds were really rotten folks. That was written 500 years after what happened. And so there are some clues in the text and in the history of the way the Bible looks at shepherds that help us see it differently than what commonly is preached. It says in chapter 2, verse 18, all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. It does not say they were amazed at the shepherds said this. They said they were amazed at what they actually said. Okay, and that's because I don't think people were surprised that the shepherds saw this. They heard from these angels in the fields. They were outside at night, and God revealed them to them. My point is, the biblical portrait of a shepherd is extremely positive in the Old and New Testament. I'll give you some examples. Number one, Abraham was a shepherd. And he's a pretty famous guy. pretty good guy. It says Lot, who was moving in Genesis 13:5, Lot was his nephew, Abraham's nephew, was moving about with Abram, who also had flocks. What kind of flocks? Sheep and herds and tents. So Abraham was a shepherd. Second, Moses was a shepherd. It says in Exodus 3:1, now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. So the flocks of sheep. He was a shepherd. It says, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Third, David was a shepherd. He's a pretty important guy in the Old Testament. David went back and forth from Saul to tend to his father's sheep at Bethlehem. So here are these three most important characters in our Bible in the Old Testament: Moses, David. These guys were shepherds. They were thought of as wonderful people. One of the best verses in the Bible, Psalm 23:1. The Lord is what? My shepherd. I shall not want. In Ezekiel 34, this vision, this idea of a shepherd, as a shepherd seeketh out his flock in the day that is among his sheep that are scattered. So will I seek out my sheep and will deliver them all out of all places where they've been scattered in the cloudy and dark day. Throughout the Old Testament, shepherds are portrayed as good things. A very important job they had. In the New Testament, Matthew 2:6 in the Christmas story, it says, and thou Bethlehem in the land of Judea art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. And the next verse is John 10:11. Jesus says, I am the good, what? Shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for his sheep. Jesus describes himself as a shepherd. And then Acts 20:28, he says, we should be like shepherds. He says, keep watch over yourselves and all the flock which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. Be shepherds of the church of God, which he bought with his own blood. And so my point of all this, on this day where throughout the world, people were preaching on the shepherds were not despised outcasts. You know what the shepherds were? They were ordinary. They were ordinary folks. They weren't folks who were despised, but they were ordinary. I mean, you probably, if you wanted to have a very fancy party, you wouldn't want shepherds maybe coming without taking a shower first. Okay? They were ordinary, hardworking, good folks that were out in the fields, working, doing a job at night, and that's who God decided to reveal who this baby was to. Okay? Now, it says there were shepherds living out in the fields. The word for fields here is agrilantes. We get the word agricultural, agra, it means, of the land. And in their culture, there were two kinds of fields. There were, for farmers, there were the fields that they would let animals graze in that were filled with rocks. If you've ever been to Israel, they'll never have a golf course in Israel. I mean, so many rocks. Everywhere you go, there's rocks. And the only place there's not rocks is when they've taken all the rocks out to grow some kind of crop, like wheat or something like that. And so here we're told that the shepherds were living not in the places where animals usually graze, but in the fields. You see, what happened is in their time of year was not that different than time of year for us. And so the fall was when they had the harvest, and sometime between September and late October, they would let, after the harvest been collected, they would let these sheep go out in the fields to graze the stubble. There would be a little bit left in the fields, and so this way the farmers would let the shepherds come in and they'd graze over the stubble to clean the field, and it provided fertilizer for the field. and they would mix that fertilizer into the field next year before planting. And so it was a symbiotic relationship. It was good for both the farmer, it was good for the shepherds. And so they played an important part. In fact, they might want to say, hey, when are you going to bring your sheep over? Graze in our fields. And so this was happening. The shepherds lived in the fields, not just to protect from animals, but also to make sure that the sheep didn't get into what they didn't need to get into. They may have had grain stored. They may have had other people's fields, and so they had to stay in their own fields. It says, nearby, keeping watch over their flock at night, these shepherds were living outside. And an angel of the Lord. So you got this picture now, these ordinary guys living out. By the way, many of them would be single before they got married because they had to be away from the house a lot at night. Or they were seniors, okay, that didn't have a family to take care of. And so the angel of the Lord appeared to these shepherds, and the glory of the Lord, like Shekinah glory, this incredible, light show. It's much more than the Aurora Borealis, shone around them, and they were terrified. They'd never seen anything like this. They were in the middle of the fields at night. Maybe it's, midnight, maybe 1 o'clock. And they wake up to this big light show and glory. And then the angel said to them, do not be afraid. Almost every time you see an angel in the Bible, it says, do not be afraid. I've never seen somebody had an angel that I would be afraid of. So we create angels that look different. We put wings on little boys and girls and said, aren't they angels? You're not afraid of those. Well, some of you might be. The angel said, do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for everybody. This is great news they're getting in the middle of the night. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you, and he is the Messiah, the Lord. And this will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and laying in a manger. And this is very unusual. They never put babies in mangers. What were mangers? What was a manger like? Well, a manger was a feeding trough. Okay, I got a picture here. Most mangers that we see in our churches are what? Made out of wood. Most of their mangers were not. In fact, most of their furniture was made out of this stone. They would make tables. They would make all kinds of things, chairs. They would make, the water trough. This was a water trough. I got another picture of one. It was made for the animals to drink out of and sometimes, I guess, to eat out of. And so this is where the baby was born and put. That image. It is a remarkable thing that the sign for the shepherds was not a star over the top. It was, there's a baby in a manger. The last place you would think somebody important would be born. They would have thought, well, we would have to go to Jerusalem and have to go, someplace in a palace to see this birth. But no, it was in a plain place, in a manger. Suddenly, a great company of heavenly hosts appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest, heaven on earth, peace to those whom his favor rests. Now, I think of, I was watching some of y'all during the music today, and you were moving good, the music, and because it's joyful. And as you do that, you want to respond with joy. The music is joyful. You feel joyful. And this is what was going on with the shepherds. They felt this joy. And when the angels had left them and gone back into heaven, the shepherds looked at each other. Did that really happen? And they did the right thing. They said, let's go to Bethlehem and let's see this thing that has happened that we just heard about, which the Lord has told us about. Now, I don't know. I don't think they probably left the sheep to scatter. They might have left somebody there with them. I would have hated to have that job. I'd want to go see the baby. And so they hurried off. They found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the feeding trough. And when they see him, by the way, there was no camels, there was no wise men, there was no star at this time. That came a little later in the story. And when they seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. So when they saw that it was true and what they'd experienced was actually fact, they started telling everybody. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. And Mary treasured up all these things was happening, you know. So the angel did not appear to Mary when she had the baby, or Joseph. Angel appeared to the shepherds. The shepherds appeared to Mary. Incredible. It's different than what we have in the movies. The shepherd returned, glorified and praising God for all the things they'd heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. So, what does all this make a difference to you and me today? Well, they did some choices, I think, that resulted in bringing them joy and bringing a sense of peace, I think, in their lives, that they did the right thing. Firstly, they chose to hear the good news. You know, somebody can tell you something and you don't really pay attention. You ever had something told to you and you just weren't listening and you got the tail end of it and you go, what was that? What was that? They actually really listened and believed what was going on. It says they actually heard it. It says the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen. So they heard it good enough to repeat it over and over again to people, which were just as they had been told. Second, they chose to do what God was leading them to do. And if you read it carefully, God didn't specifically tell them to do what to do. He kind of suggested almost. The angels did. It says, today in the town of David, the angel said, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. The angel did not say, I want you to go to Bethlehem. I want you to go to this address. I want you to look for this baby. He says, you will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. I imagine there might have been a little bit of a debate when they decided to go do this, because some of them who maybe been very, good at keeping things and being careful might say, well, we don't want to leave these sheep. We don't want to get fired. We don't want to get in trouble. But no, they decided we're going to go. We heard this. They said, we'll find this. Let's go see if we'll find it. Let's not put it off. Let's not do it tomorrow night. Let's do it tonight. Let's do it right now. And they experienced great joy from this. Third, they chose to tell somebody else. Whenever you get good news, don't you like to tell it? I mean, somebody tells you something and you want to tell other people. You want to say, hey, let me tell you what happened to me. Let me tell you what happened to me. And if you're married to somebody, you probably hear the same stories over and over and over and over again. Because we like to tell good stories, good news. Here they did. When they had seen Jesus, they spread the word concerning what they'd been told about this child. And so they did, and the more they shared the news, the better they felt about it. When is the last time you shared your testimony or what God had been doing in your life with somebody else? When's the last time you shared something about your faith, what you understand the Bible teaches, what God has been working in your life about? When's the last time you did that? Last night? Very good. Very good. When you do that, you experience joy. It's something that is part of the way it works. If you're going through some times, and a lot of us are this time of year, we get so busy, we get so tired, we get so wound up in different stuff that we miss the whole point of it all. To be able to simply tell what the Lord has been doing in your life, maybe tell somebody what the purpose of Christmas is. it was not a chore for me in the parade. I mean, I did not work on the float as much as some people. I did a little bit, but not as much as some people. I painted a little bit, and then I kept telling everybody how I painted. But doing that, you know, walking around saying Merry Christmas and having the Christmas songs playing while the kids are singing the songs from their play that they're going to have soon, and wave. One little girl said that her arm got tired, her armpit got tired because she was waving the whole time. But it uplifts your spirits. Something about telling the good news makes you experience the good news. And so this year, if you're going through Christmas and saying, you know, I just don't feel like Christmas this year, or I'm just not really getting it, well, listen, it's here. The good news is here. And when you respond to how God is working in your life, however that might be for you today, and it'll be different for each of us, when you respond to that, and when you tell others about it, you know, one of the things that people do at Christmas time is they come to church. I never went to church growing up, except I was a C&E Christian, Christmas and Easter, okay? Invite somebody, tell somebody. You know, at the time when I first started coming to church, I'm sure there were people who think, well, they're here for a while, but I'll never see them again. But people engaged with me. People were nice to me. People were friendly to me. People reached out to me. And it changed my life. Tell the good news. Share it with others. It will give you a way of experiencing this story that's more than just reading about it. Because God is still at work. This Christmas, he wants you to say yes to Jesus. And yes, in sharing your faith with others.